The New Mind by Aquila Doltana. The interaction between mind and body. Man is more than 3 million years old. That is what the fossils tells us. But the probe into man is relatively recent. It was initiated during the Greek period, which is merely 4 to 5,000 years ago. We all know that the basic building blocks of our universe are atoms, as everything is made up of these tiny particles. When atoms become cells, they are endowed with certain consciousness, a certain awareness and sensitivity. These cells then perform various functions and due to their separate functions become different. A unicellular or a one-cell body takes food, is sensitive to heat and cold, and excretes. A cell can reproduce itself, but atoms cannot perform these functions. They can vibrate and oscillate, and they have all the universal forces locked in them. Plant cells are less sensitive than animal cells, and the degree of sensitivity is a degree of intelligence functioning in them. The human cell is more sensitive than an animal cell. It is therefore more intelligent. The basic cell structure is very much the same for plants, animals, and human beings. All these have a cell nucleus, which is bound by the cell membrane or a cell wall. The difference in each species is due to the different numbers of chromosomes in nucleus. The number of chromosomes in corn is 20, chimpanzees have 48, tomato have 24, and man has 48, while some birds and fishes have over 100. Human organism is a product of one primary cell, and whatever information is stored in that cell, it will be the same in the rest of the cells of the body. Therefore, all the cells in one organism are alike and carry the same food codes for that particular person. Our nervous system is made up of billions of neurons. Most of the neurons are in the brain and spinal cord, which make our central nervous system. Other neurons make the nerves, which carry signals to and from all the parts of the body. The human nervous system is one of the finest communication media ever built. A neuron is a very special cell. It is made specially for communication within the body. They are organized in such a way as to function as conductors of chemical and electrical information. Neurons can collect information, hold it, and then transmit it over the long distances of the body. They are actually the communication units of the organism, but it is the interconnection between the various brain cells which is most fascinating. One cell is connected with the other cells in nearly 200 to 100,000 different ways. It is a function of these interconnections between the cells that makes the brain so complex. Evolutionists say that the human brain has evolved through the ages. Anthropologists say that the beginning of the size of our brain was that of a chimpanzee. It kept growing bigger and now weighs nearly 3.5 pounds. The size of a Cro-Magnon man's brain was bigger than ours. Ours is 1450 cubic centimeters, whereas his was 1160 cc. Even our cranial structure has been changing through the ages and is slightly different. It is like any other thing in the universe. From the stars to the plants or a small insect, everything is changing and evolving. So is the human brain, which has evolved through the centuries, and the past man is revealed to us by the cycles of life. Man is a mysterious phenomenon, and the brain itself is a mystery. This 3.5 pounds of gray and white mass is a generator, a transmitter, and a receiver of thoughts, and an idea processing machine. Of course, a wireless transmitter can only transmit the sound fed into it, which is we hear on the radio. But our brain holds all the former qualities. Biologists are probing into the physical nature of a man. Psychologists are inquiring into the psyche or the abstract nature, conscious, unconscious, and the subconscious layers of mind. And the psychologists are busy trying to understand this phenomenal brain of ours. Thanks to modern technology and fascinating discoveries of brain psychologists, who by passing electrodes on the heads of different patients found that there are various centers in the brain. These centers are actually the different functions of the brain. As animals have limited centers, their behavior is restricted too. Bees throughout the world have the similar manner. They buzz, they hum, they make honeycomb and produce honey. This limitation in their behavior is brought about by their limited centers, and all of this seems to be computerized. This stands true for the rest of the animal kingdom as well. As man has various centers, that of touch, taste, smell, emotion, intellect, and many others, he behaves in a variety of ways. Actually, the various brain centers are the man himself. He is nothing more nor less. Whatever is stored potentially in him by the human race, only that comes out. He cannot be more than what actually is inherent in him. Even his brain is computerized and therefore limited. On the other hand, we are much more than is thought because we are not functioning fully and many of the brain centers are still lying dormant. We do not exactly know why they are there, but the brain scientists like Lashley and Hirdzik think that these silent areas are specific for intelligence and abstract thought, where memories, experiences, and knowledge become associated. The mapping of the brain is the same for all human beings as the brain centers for all of us are located at fixed places. Still, we are all different individuals. We do not exactly know why we are all choose to activate different brain centers and therefore behave differently from each other. Some choose to develop the emotional center and behave emotionally. Others activate their center of taste and enjoy eating, and some develop their intellectual center and have intelligent functioning in them. It is for us to make the choice as to which center we would like to develop, or are we dependent on other things for our choice? Here, we cannot ignore our DNA. DNA, that organic compound which contains the code which regulates all the activities of life. Therefore, it regulates the chemistry of the life of a cell. One's height, features, and many other things, physical and non-physical, are directed by our DNA code. DNA being a physical law by itself, the actual meaning of the life is the unfolding and refining of this law. The potential which is stored in us in a latent form as qualities comes out as one's behavior in the overt form. Therefore, it is not so easy to say that our mind can choose to develop whichever center it likes. In this case of DNA, we have seen that our cell structure also decides for us what we shall become. The interaction of our organism with the environment is another cause of affecting the organism and cellular structure. Therefore, both the factors, the DNA code and the body's interaction with the environment, cannot be ignored while making the decision as to which center is to be activated. Having the knowledge of various brain centers, man can do a lot to enhance his evolution. Having the knowledge of various brain centers, man can do a lot to enhance his evolution. We have seen that his mind has not got the total control to decide everything on its own, but is affected by other forces, which shows that the mind is not only the ruler which governs the body. The cell by itself is the law. The mind and the mechanism of the body are both dependent on each other, unless the mind is strong enough to overpower the cellular law. The cell being itself is a biological law. Only a mind which is more organized can break the inertia of matter and modify the instincts. What is this thing we call our mind? Our organism is made up of cells which, in turn, are made up of atoms, and atoms vibrate and oscillate. Each body is vibrating at its own rate of vibration. As the cells of an organism are of similar nature, a body has its own particular vibration. Therefore, each organism is different vibrating body. Life is the interaction of organism and the life force, which we call our mind. Each mind has its own particular frequency, and like the cell frequency, this life energy is also vibrating at a certain rate within a certain time period. Just as heat waves, which are energy waves, have a different frequency from that of other waves. The same is the case with different minds. They have their own different frequencies. When a particular vibrating frequency is similar to a body frequency or a cell frequency, interaction takes place between mind and body and thus life emerges. Therefore, our life as a whole is the interaction of two. The best example which I can provide here of the existence of the mind, the non-material life force which is running our organism and its interaction with our material body, is that, though it has been quoted many times before, that is the radio circuit. There is the wireless circuit and there are transmitted EM waves which are of non-material nature. The outcome of the interaction of the two is the sound we hear. That shows that there are mechanisms which are being run by the interaction of matter with the non-material waves. Same is the case with our organism, which is the material aspect of us. It is run by a non-material force. We call our mind, our brain, being one of the most complex and fascinating things in this universe. It is therefore the calculator, the generator, as well as the transmitter of thoughts. Those who have experienced the phenomena of intuition cannot deny that this is the thought. Those who have experienced the phenomena of intuition cannot deny that it is a thought which strikes the person who receives it and that it has an undeniable effect on him. This shows two things. Firstly, that our brain is receptor, which can receive thoughts, and secondly, that another mind is a transmitter, giving out its thoughts. Intuition also shows that thoughts are being conveyed to us from everywhere, all the time. This shows that there is a world of thoughts around us, and our brain is the most sensitive receiving antenna, which is specially made to receive thoughts. Sherrington declared, "Our cerebrum may be regarded as the ganglion of the distant receptor." I feel that there are all types of thoughts prevailing in the universe. It depends upon a man what brain cells he has activated. If he has activated the positive centers, which bring forth positive and spiritual results, the resulting vibration will be of finer quality. He can also attract the finer thoughts, frequencies prevailing in the atmosphere. The result of activating of a negative center is the negative thoughts, like hate and anger. Our body attracts such thoughts from everywhere. Therefore, it depends upon us to raise and lower the thought's frequency levels. Some incidents of parapsychology also tells us that the brain is quite a strong transmitter as well. People have tried to convey their message successfully to others far and near. We see in our daily lives that the brain is capable of generating its own thoughts, as is proved from the sensation to the processing of ideas and the concept of formation. All is done by our brain. Therefore, we see the brain and mind functioning together as one consciousness till death separates them. The mind uses the nervous system as the communication system to communicate with others, inside as well as outside the body. It takes many a lifetime for the mind or consciousness to refine itself gradually, with control of mind by purifying the animal instincts and moving towards a higher consciousness, which is its actual realm. Our life is not merely the refinement of our cell structure, but is also undergoing evolution. In life, happenings takes place according to the certain definite laws. Everything in the world is vibrating, and the rate of vibration which anything possesses determines the character of that thing. Our thoughts determined by our vibration and are changed by right or wrong actions, depending on the mental attitude of that particular moment. If one is happy, his vibrations are of certain frequency, and if one is unhappy, there are different frequencies. Each thought forms develops its own particular vibrations. A sensitive and intelligent mind means finer vibrations and also more developed and refined frontal lobes, which can catch higher frequency waves. An intelligent mind needs a refined brain at its instrument to function itself. To catch particular types of waves and phenomena of interface and resonance becomes essential. We have to set the receiver, which is our brain, in such a way that it responds to incoming frequencies, which is to be received. It is a latent quality of a mind to move towards perfection. Slowly and gradually, it takes a lifetime for the mind to refine itself. In time, by purifying the animal instincts and moving towards the higher consciousness. The difference between one material object and the other is that they vibrate differently. The net result of the difference in things is due to their indifferences in frequencies. Higher consciousness is mind at a higher spiritual or purer level. This is the law of vibrations, which scientifically put is the interaction between the same types of fields. At this very moment, communication is taking place in an unconscious way. But when mind becomes conscious of the regulations of the vibrating bodies, there will be a conscious effort on its part to enhance its thought levels and communicate with higher frequencies. This demands honesty, genuineness, sincerity of motive, control, and hard work, and a total change from one state of consciousness to another with the sincerity of purpose. The new mind. Each thing in this universe is interacting with other. Our food, climate, disease, diet, occupation, the very society we live in, our geographical conditions, all these being our physical environment have an effect on us. Minds of others affect us psychologically and gradually bringing change in us. The rays coming from the stars and far away galaxies act on the physical and social conditions prevailing around us. Knowledge gained from books, watching TV, listening to radio, and interaction by contact with other minds and societies become the base for the person to change, as change is one of the ways of moving forward. Physical displacement of any kind takes place by change from one place to another in a certain direction. As one state of mind changes to another state of interaction with its physical, economical, geographical, historical, psychological, religious environment, and many more factors are involved. Thus, it becomes essential for different societies to provide a better and more educated environment for the individual, which is the most precious gift a society can bestow upon a person. If our knowledge is limited, so shall we remain as knowledge enhances and improves us. It refines us too. Therefore, learning of various types is essential for our improvement. Knowledge of different sciences as well as different schools of thoughts. To get acquainted with all these is important. We also acquire information through many other ways by observing and perceiving, by exchanging of ideas with others, and by practically experiencing life by ourselves. Experimentation is one of the most essential part of knowledge. Without it, our learning stays fertile, incomplete, and subjective. Here, scientific knowledge, which is based on observation and experimentation, comes to our help. What type of information is essential for us depends upon what type of life we would like to live, as knowledge is linked with our living and present life, as knowledge is linked with our living and represents life in a better form. I wonder whether we are getting enough information about the world around us, especially scientific information, which is based on the laws of nature, which are most modern, correct, and dependable. As by seeing more and learning more of such things, we are becoming more, we are actually educating and refining our senses and expanding that limited consciousness of an individual to a universal consciousness. Words are the most important vehicles of knowledge, but we have hardly understood the importance of words. The mind needs a language to express itself, the function through words and symbols. The way atoms are building blocks of this universe. Words are the building blocks of all the languages. Our conversation, our communication, all our reading, writing, and listening, our dreaming as well, are dependent on words. Word makes our thought world. It would be difficult to imagine how thought would function and how we would be able to communicate with others without them. Even for pure imagination, we are dependent on them. They are the most used and misused elements in the world. Refinement of words depends on our knowledge of the world around. Various types of knowledge means expansion of the world of words. As stated by many, before we utter a word or make a statement, so many things can take place. A sentence like, "I see an apple," requires seeing and perceiving of an object, taking in the scene of a visual cortex from where the messages are carried to the association areas of the brain, where understanding of the scene takes place and the ideas and decisions are formed that I see an apple. Further to bring forth, this is a verbal statement, a few other things like sound, air, our vocal system, and voice which utters these words become essential. From seeing to the utterance of words makes one big system. Different parts of the body, our outside condition like air and our inner thinking process becomes responsible for us to bring forth a verbal statement we call sound or a word. Throughout the animal kingdom, it is the only man who speaks and expresses himself intelligently. From what and when we see the whole process of utterance as a very intricate and intelligent process. Something in the mind wants to express itself and the body and speech organs are created to use them for it. A word in reality is the expression of mind through sound. When life leaves the body, the corpse is still there, but the sound is not, breath is not, or the mind or life is not. The phenomenon of thought transference, which is divorced from sound, is still dependent on words. Our limited minds are dependent on sound, but I strongly feel that in the coming future, when our cellular refinement advances further, sound will not be essential, and the thought would be communicated to the other person by symbols, which is the language of subconsciousness. The best example I can give here is the intuition, which we call one of the phenomena of the silent thought transference, and the immediate comprehension by the other mind of that thought, whether coming from far or near. This is one of the most developed ways of communication, where the mind expresses itself without sound. Sometimes is the form of soundless verbal language, and sometimes through symbolic language, which is based on happy or unhappy feelings and hunches. I strongly feel that for intuition there has to be a different type of body, which has more refined cellular structure, as intelligence or higher mind can only function through more specialized and sensitive tools or sensitive brain cells for its expression. Here, we see two things, a body and a mind, and the interaction between the two. Mostly our bodily forms are like everyone else, neither are they more defined nor sensitive. But in life, we sometimes do come across such people who have disciplined themselves, biologically as well as in their thinking process. They give us a clue that the mind can work at different levels of consciousness if one truly desires to do so. They advise us that the physical discipline comes by eating the right kind of food, meditating or keeping the mind silent from the mundane activities and doing physical exercises. Whereas thought disciplines comes from training a random thinking process and keeping in mind only such thoughts which are essential, universal, and spiritual nature. Thought is the tool which a mind uses to communicate with the rest of the body. Our thought process is defined by the mind. Our thought process is defined by the mind, and in turn, our mind by the inherent intelligence, which is the consciousness in us. When I mention the word mind, I do not mean the thinking process, which is of electrochemical nature and is dependent upon our nerves' impulses and dies with matter. Mind and thinking process are two distinct things. One uses the other to express itself. Our mind, being the eternal aspect in us, is gradually evolving and unfolding its true nature through many a lifetime. What we call the evolution of mind actually is the unfoldment of the reality in us. The way ugliness is the absence of beauty, darkness and absence of light, ignorance the absence of knowledge, and between the stages are different grades of beauty, light and knowledge. The same is the case with our mind, which is overshadowed by the desires and ambitions of the body and has lost its true nature. One of the qualities of matter is inertia. Very quickly, a human mind acquires certain habits, then later feels secure in those habits. Intelligence in us forces the body to break its inertia and modify its physical and thinking tendencies to become fresh and new. This new state of mind needs fresh thought, which is independent of past conditioning. This new state of mind needs fresh thought, which is independent of past conditioning, needs a changed outlook, a new perception, and a new body, in a word, a new and more modern brain. The old brain was alright for the old, outdated mind, which passively bore the rights and wrongs of the society, which never inquired or searched for the actual truth, and was quite satisfied with the information handed down to it, as well as with its comforts and securities. When society acquires new qualities, it is these qualities which become the cause of change in the individual. This thought, when forms new societies, new institutions, and new culture emerges. This is no harm in questioning ourselves whether life is merely infancy, youth, maturity, and death. I suppose this is our physical lifespan. Or do all these different stages represent different states of mind and the different stages of maturity of thought, getting defined in time with the development and decay of the body? Or do we take life just as it comes as a mundane activity of waking, eating, working, and sleeping? To be satisfied with the prevailing condition is an awful thing. It is the body in inertia which refuses to change itself. The very instincts have to be changed, uprooted, which gives us certain security in conformity. As children, our actions were limited, as our knowledge of things was limited. Also, our interaction with the world was limited. But by the constant interaction and communication with the society or with different societies, a certain coherent and intelligent behavior by the individual begins to emerge. An individual reflects the quality of his mind through his actions and his speech. Behind each intelligent act or a word is a thoughtful mind and a developed perception. Our perception is what we actually are, and it is the way we see the world, look at the world, and perceive it mentally. The difference between you and me is your perception of a thing. Though we see the same thing, but we react differently, and therefore create a different world for both of us. Therefore, each act of ours becomes the utmost importance for each one of us. And the number of acts make our behavior, which shows that what type of mind we possess and what sort of thoughts we are indulging in. If our thinking is planned and not at random or based on limited feelings and emotions, it will show certain positive and rational results. As the act is the mirror which reveals our inner self to the outer world as well as us to ourselves. It is one of the most important things. It tells us that what is happening inside us consciously as well as unconsciously. An act reveals to us the working of that hidden self which we call our psyche or mind, which is difficult to understand and is only expressed through outward behavior. It is by our right and thoughtful acts we are going to bring change in our unconsciousness. We are going to bring the change in our consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of all the religions as well.